I'm going to reread all of this in just a moment. But as I was preparing this sermon, I began laying out some of the things that were in the background of this book of Micah. And all of a sudden, I put my pen down and I said to myself, this is just like our country today. I guess I've always thought in these terms, but at the same time there was something about this that said to me, this is a contemporary thing. Many of you knew Brother J.P. Sanders. When J.P. Sanders was teaching us a course which included the minor prophets, he made the statement that I've remembered all these years. He said, the minor prophets are as contemporary as tomorrow's newspaper. I really believe this. I want you to think, as we look at the background here, I want you to think of the things in our own country which parallel so much of this and the solution to the problem. I don't want to oversimplify things, but the solution to the problem is so much simpler than we give it credit for sometimes. Reading the text from the 6th chapter of the book of Micah. God is going to hold court with the people of Israel. He's going to call on the enduring foundations of the world to be his witnesses. And he's going to bring a plea before the people. And then the people in a court setting are going to answer that plea. And then we have the final statement from the judge. Listen to what the Lord says. Stand up, plead your case before the mountains. Let the hills hear what you have to say. Hear, O mountains, the Lord's accusations. Listen, you everlasting foundations of the earth. For the Lord has a case against his people. He is lodging a charge against Israel. And now he gives the charge. My people, what have I done to you? How have I burdened you? Answer me. I brought you up out of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. I sent Moses to lead you, also Aaron and Miriam. My people, remember what Balak, the king of Moab, counseled, and what Balaam, the son of Beor, answered. Remember your journey from Shittim unto Gilgal, that you may know the righteous acts of the Lord. And now the reply of the people. With what shall I come before the Lord and bow down before the exalted God? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with 1,000 rams or 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I offer my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul? The solution. He has showed you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord request of you? Listen to it. To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Folks, we are just like the 8th century Israelites in so many ways. Let's look at what they were like. Well, they had what has been called later a syncretistic religion. It's a word we don't use very often to describe something that we observe every day. Everybody's religion is the same. Your religion's as good as mine, mine's just as good as somebody else's. Don't make a difference in religion because that's his religion. Don't say he's wrong because he's sincere. And so there's an amalgamation of all kinds of religions. And I'm not talking just about Protestantism or Catholicism. I'm talking about the religions of the world. And they're all seeking God, people say. And so there's a syncretistic idea here. That is a synchronization, or an attempted synchronization of all religions. So nobody ever offends anybody else. Nobody ever says anything adverse to anybody else's religion. All you need to do is read the Bible, and you'll find out that never was a stand that God told his people to take. Well, what did this mean for the Israelites? Oh, it meant some very strange things for the Israelites, and yet not too far away from America and the West. For example, they had the worship of Baal. They had the worship of Asherah. They had the worship of what they called the starry host. They had the worship of Molech and a variety of other gods. Oh, these had strange things in them. The worship of Baal included all sorts of sexually immoral acts that were condoned by their religion. The worship of Molech demanded infant sacrifice. And you kind of go on and on and on, and you find that Israel had lost sight of the pure religion of God, although, wait a minute now, they still worshiped God. They still worshiped the Lord. Oh, they were very particular about the Sabbath days, for example. They were very particular about the sacrifices and all of that, but they mixed all of this together. Syncretism. Isn't that pretty much what we see in our own country today? Where people are living immoral lives and churches wink. Where people lie and cheat and religious people say nothing. Where there's all kinds of corruption and we kind of let it go. The moral and ethical aspects of the people of Israel was at a low ebb. They lost their sensitivity about the less fortunate people. They lost sight of the fact that poor people were being not only neglected but abused. And if you didn't have the money to go to court, you were at the mercy maybe of somebody else. The political and economic situation was about the same. All kinds of corruption in their politics. The prophets mention this over and over and over. How it was that there was an unholy alliance here between the politicians, the king, his staff, the politicians, and the priests under the Levitical system. And the priests were corrupt, and the politicians were corrupt, and they worked together. Does that say anything to us in our own generation? Militarily, well, they relied a great deal on their military. There were nations around them, particularly at various times, Babylon and Assyria and Egypt. At various times, they were the threats. And Israel depended on its military for that. And it was invaded and then the invaders were pushed away, and there was all kinds of terror that was going on. You find that in the books of 1st and 2nd Kings particularly. And there were all kinds of things like this that were taking place, and the military was a very, very important thing. But even in the military there was corruption. What are maybe some solutions to problems like this? Well, there's one thing I haven't mentioned here, but it's thought of as a solution. Good economy. Good economy. I remember when I visited the city of Samaria. You know, Samaria was the old capital of the divided kingdom, the old capital of Israel in the north. And Amos talks about the people lived in luxury. They lived on beds of ivory, and they drank the finest wines and all of this sort of thing. You do think, oh man, the economy is just going crazy around here. Everybody is living so well. No, there was another class of people. They were the poor. They were the widows. They were the people who were less fortunate. The people who had no influence. And those people were being abused. Those people were being taken advantage of. You know, as I was preparing this, I sat down and thought, my, there's so many things here that parallel our own country. Are we treating them the same way? I'm not saying that we are the people who can change the politics of our country, of any country, but that is going to come just a little bit later. Well, there's political corruption. Economic boom and political corruption. In some cases, the politicians and the religionists were allied. The military threats that had come around were being taken care of at various times. They had few moral, ethical restraints on them, and so all of this began mixing itself together. The immorality was winked at. The corruption was winked at. The economy was bolstered. A lot of trade and a lot of things like this were going on. And the prophets were saying, hey, don't you see what's going on here? You've left God. You've left God out of your life. You've left God out of your national life. You've left Him out of your personal life. Don't you see what's going on? And what did they say to the prophets? Get lost. We don't want to hear this kind of stuff. Look at our economy. Look at our prosperity. Look at the way we're living. Everybody's happy. Everybody's getting along well. Yes, there's some poor people that are having a tough time. That's their problem. So let's look at our text. God asks a question. He begins by saying, my people, what have I done to you? When we live in the greatest blessed country in the world and we leave God, maybe God is saying, my people, what have I done to you? Look at what I have blessed you with, and now you leave me out of your life. And so God asks, my people, what have I done to you? How have I burdened you? Answer me. And then he enumerates some of the things that he did. I brought you out of the land of Egypt, up from the house of slavery. I sent a leader to you named Moses. I sent Aaron and Miriam. I took care of you when the king of Moab was trying to curse you. I took care of you when you were going on your journey, particularly from Shittim to Gilgal. Don't you know my righteous acts? Or have you forgotten that I exist? Or have you forgotten that I've blessed you? Well, this is just such a terrible thing, because people come to a point sometime where they, maybe I better say we instead of they. We become so used to a lifestyle. We become so used to not having God in our lives. We become so negligent of God in so many ways. And God says, answer me. I've blessed you. And so they come back and they say, what in the world does this God want? It reminds me of a husband and wife. Oh, they're at odds with each other. And one says to the other, what do you want from me? I'll give you anything you want. I'll buy you a new house. I'll buy you a new car. I'll give you all the clothes you want. What do you want from me? And the wife says, I just want you to love me. I don't want anything. I just want you to love me. I just want you to spend time with the children and be a good parent. That's all I want. The answer is so simple. And yet it seems at the same time that we've lost touch with what God really wants. Do we need to do some spectacular thing? Do we need to give all of our money? Do we need to do something that the whole world would sit back and say, oh, what a wonderful thing he did? Well, no. God doesn't want our things. He wants us. He wants you. He wants me. Maybe we could say with these people, God, I will do anything. I don't really know what you want, God. Would you like for me to bring some extravagant gift to the temple? Would you like for me to offer 1,000 rams in sacrifice? I'll do that if that's what you want. Would you like to have libations of the most expensive oils? I will even sacrifice my little baby if that's what you want, Lord. So confused. And then the Lord just comes back and said, hey, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm not looking for things. I'm looking for you. I want you. I want your loyalty. I just want you to love me. And you can't love me without worshiping me. You can't love me without being loyal and faithful to me. And it's so simple. And so he says, here are some of the things I just want to mention to you. He has shown you, O man, what is good. What does the Lord require of you? Good title for a sermon, isn't it? What does the Lord require of you? But to do justly. That's the first thing he says. Do justly. You say, well, I'm not an unjust person. Well, maybe I am. You see, justice is based on integrity. National integrity is based on personal integrity. And personal integrity is based on love for truth. Well, we think nothing of lying a little bit in this situation or that, if it's necessary, if it's needed. But that's a lack of integrity. He's talking about you and me. I want you to learn what real justice is. That is integrity, personal integrity. And the next thing he says, I want you to love mercy. Do justly. Love mercy. Some of the versions translate this as love kindness. When I was preparing this, I thought of a statement in the book of Ephesians. I want you to listen to this. Ephesians 4. Get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger and brawling, and slander, along with all forms of malice. Throw them out. Get rid of them. And then what? Be kind. Be compassionate. Be compassionate to one another. Forgive each other. Forgive one another. You know, there's a statement that's so strange to us sometimes. One of the apostles came to Jesus and said, Lord, should I forgive my brother? How many times should I forgive my brother when he continues to sin against me? Up till 7 times? Well, they had kind of an idea that you forgive him 3 times, that's it. That's it. Okay. Well, he multiplied that by 2 and added 1. Up until 7 times. What did Jesus say? Oh, you know this. What did Jesus say? He said, Peter, not 7 times. 70 times 7. I think that's what? 490? I don't know about you. I never had anybody sin against me 7 times in one day. Jesus says, listen, you've been forgiven by God. Forgive, forgive, forgive. Forget what happened. Let it be in the past. Set it aside. Be reconciled. Learn to love kindness. I can't love kindness unless I get rid of bitterness and rage and anger and brawling and slander and malice. You see, kindness doesn't just come to me because I say, Lord, give me kindness. I want to be a kind person. But I want to hang on to all this other stuff, you know. No. It isn't until we're willing to erase those things. Kindness helps us to erase all offense. So he says, what does the Lord require of you? Do justly, love kindness. And then the last one was to walk humbly. Notice how these are related to each other. The idea of justice, mercy, kindness, and humility. They are a trinity of good things. William Shakespeare wrote something that always has stuck in my mind ever since I read it. The quality of mercy is not strained. It droppeth as the gentle rain from heaven upon the place beneath. It's twice blessed. It blesseth him that gives and him that takes. It's mightiest in the mightiest. It becomes the throned monarch better than his crown. Isn't that a beautiful thing? And see how that leads right into this idea of humility. Walk humbly with your God. Jesus not only said, blessed are the merciful, but he also said, blessed are the poor in spirit. Walk humbly with your God. Oh, that was a bad thing in the days of Jesus. It was a bad thing in the days of Israel. Humility was a bad thing you're just not supposed to be humble. You're supposed to be arrogant and aggressive. That's a sign of strength. Humility is a sign of weakness. That's the way they looked at it. And Jesus says, the one who humbles himself will be exalted, and the one who exalts himself will be humbled. It isn't being shy. It isn't a feeling of inferiority. Humility makes us considerate of other people. Humility lends itself to justice and kindness. Jesus taught both, and he exemplified both. Well, Israel had its problem, didn't it? Maybe we want to go away and forget about all this stuff and say, well, I'm just one person. I can't change my nation. No, I don't think any of us in here can change our nation, but I'll tell you something. I can change me. I can't change you. And you can't change your husband or your wife or your friend, but you can change you. And basically the only way we can have any element of influence on other people is to be what God wants us to be now. So, you've heard it before. You hear it again. A better world begins with me. A better world begins with me. A better neighborhood begins with me. A better family begins with me. A better any group of people begins with me. Let us not be so intent on changing the world that we lose sight of changing ourselves. Go home and sit down and read the 6th chapter of the book of Micah, the first 8 verses. It can change your life. If you're not a Christian today, this is a wonderful time to make your confession of Christ and be baptized into Christ today. If that's your desire, we're going to stand and sing an invitation song. We invite you to come. Let's stand.